Okay, guys, I'm going to be reading this, but while I'm reading it, you go ahead and have the book open so you can follow along, and then also have your workbook open as well. So this is about Connecticut. We're on lesson 11. If you remember, we just finished Rhode Island. So lesson 1, Connecticut. The water of Long Island Sound, see if you can find that one on your map, separates Connecticut and New York. A sound is a narrow part of an ocean or sea with land on both sides, okay? So this is a sound. It's a narrow part. Jellyfish, and you can start working in your book on your, what's it called? Your geographic term. Jellyfish, sea turtles, and sharks swim in these waters. Some ocean creatures lay their eggs in the sound and on the sandy beaches that surround it. Find Connecticut on the map at the beginning of this book. So go ahead together and flip up there and see if you can find Connecticut, okay? The Mystic Seaport Museum. The Mystic River is one of the many rivers that flows into Long Island Sound. The Mystic Seaport Museum stands at the river's edge in Mystic, there's a green word, Connecticut. Here, visitors experience what life was like in New England fishing village in the 1800s. They watch workers build wooden ships the old-fashioned way. The museum is home to an 1841 wooden whaling ship, the Charles W. Morgan. This ship once hunted whales around the world. There's the Charles H. Morgan and Long Island Sound. Hundreds of small islands lie clustered off the coast of Connecticut. The Mattabasic people who once lived in this area called them Kudumquash, which means the beautiful sea rocks. Today they are known as Thimble Islands. So go ahead and find Thimble Islands on your map. Some of Thimble Islands are large enough for several houses, and others are just a small, rocky place you can only see during low tide. Tides are the rising and falling of a body of water. In most coastal places, there are 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day. When the tide is high, the water comes up. When the tide is low, the water goes down. The moon's gravity makes the tides rise and fall. Would you like to go for a walk on a sleeping giant? Connecticut's sleeping giant is a natural landform that looks like, well, a sleeping giant. In the early 1900s, people started blowing this giant to bits. The owner of the giant's head leased his land to a company that quarried rocks out of the ground. People who lived nearby complained about all the blasting from the quarry, and they complained that the giant was going to lose its shape. People worked together and organized the Sleeping Giant Park Association, Sleeping Giant State Park. So see if you can find that on your map, Sleeping Giant State Park. Members of the association still volunteered to help keep the trails in good shape. Thanks to the work of many people, visitors continue to enjoy walking on Connecticut's Sleeping Giant. Mountain level, the state flower of Connecticut grows abundantly. Mountain laurel, there it is, mountain laurel. The state flower of Connecticut grows abundantly around the state park. Captain John Smith wrote about these flowers when he explored New England in the 1600s. And then we have Dinosaur State Park. See if you can find that on your map. Imagine footprints up to 16 inches long. So 16 inches is like a ruler and a half. And up to 4.5 feet apart. And 4.5 feet apart is probably almost the size of Hannah or Genevieve apart, right? Imagine dinosaurs walking across Connecticut. In 1966, a construction worker used a bulldozer to turn over a slab of sandstone. Underneath it, he saw a large footprint with 3 toes. Soon people discovered more footprints. They decided to put a stop to the construction project. They turned the area into Dinosaur State Park. Today, 500 tracks are on display in the park. The footprints are protected from the weather so that people can continue marveling at this part of God's creation for years to come. The capital of Connecticut is Hartford. For many years, Connecticut had 2 capitals. Citizens took care of some government business in Hartford, find that on your map, and New Haven, find that on your map. Each city had its own state house. The old state house in Hartford had been around since 1796. It is the oldest state house in the country. In addition to seeing where the Senate and House of Representatives once met, visitors can see a 2-headed calf. And here's the Connecticut state capitol. Joseph Stewart opened a portrait gallery in the State House in 1797. Not many people visited his gallery, so he created a museum to try to draw larger crowds, and it worked. Stewart's Museum of Natural and Other Curiosities certainly made people curious. Visitors paid 20 cents each to come inside and see a variety of curious items, including a stuffed 2-headed calf, Stewart's Museum closed in the mid-1800s. In the 1990s, the director of the old State House worked hard to recreate it. Now visitors to the old State House can see a museum similar to the one that was here 200 years ago. In 1873, the people of Connecticut voted to make Hartford their one and only capital city. They built a new Capitol building, which is where the state senators and representatives meet today. The Bible teaches us to pray for our government leaders when it says in 1 Timothy 2, "First of all, then, I urge the entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgivings be made on behalf of all men, for kings and all who are in authority, so that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all goodness and dignity." Okay, so you should have done your, colored your item in your book. And then what body of water separates Connecticut and New York? What would that be? You guys remember? It would be the Long Island Sound. The hundreds of islands near New Haven are the what islands? And those would be, does anybody remember? See if you can think about it. Thimble. Connecticut has a large land formation that looks like what? You shouldn't have missed that one. Sleeping Giant. What did a construction worker find in Connecticut in 1966? Dinosaur footprints. And the Bible teaches us to pray for our government leaders. Okay, so it says, one idea you can do is to lay out blankets or pillows on the floor to represent the Thimble Islands. Pick one island to live on. Perhaps other family members can live on other islands. How will you travel from one to another? And then it tells you to go on a shape walk, and it says there's instructions on page 54. I don't think it means 54 in this book. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So, this is very fun. Maybe when their weather is good, you can do this. You go and try to find all the letters in shapes. So God's word is full of fun and interesting shapes, such as Sleeping Giant in Connecticut. Go on a shape walk with your family. Take a walk around your yard or your neighborhood. You guys could do it in the woods when it's not raining. Look for fun shapes in the forks of trees, in the clouds, in the lay of the land, and in your neighbor's flower bed. You might like to see if you can find shapes of all the letters of the alphabet. That would be really cool. We could take pictures and make a little book. You could look for simple shapes such as squares, rectangles, or diamonds, or you could let your imagination run wild and find other things that look like dinosaurs and unicorns. Or you might want to just go for a walk, it says. I think that would be a super fun activity for you guys to do. Maybe if you guys do a good job on that, we could make a little book of it. That would be fun. Okay, and the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the next chapter in Rabbit Hill for you. So I will do that in a minute. And I am also going to let you listen to the song The Connecticut Peddler. And then we're going to read about a good neighbor. So this says, peddlers once traveled across the countryside selling a variety of items to farm families along the way. Imagine a peddler coming up your road singing this song. The tracks upon popular sins were brochures about common sins and how to overcome them. Okay, so in a minute, we're going to listen to that. Little George Lawrence Nelson loved to hold a pencil. Actually, you know what you can do? Pause it right now and go over and click on the video in your assignment. So go do that. And actually pause it right now also. And listen to chapter 11 in Rabbit Hill. Okay, and then come back to this video. And we're going to read about a good neighbor. Little George Lawrence Nelson loved to hold a pencil in his hand. He loved to watch animals take shape on the paper in front of him. He loved to look at his mother's beautiful face and sketch her features. He drew other people too, but mostly he drew his mother. George's parents were both artists. They met in Paris, France, while studying art. They moved to New York and became an art team. They painted and designed fashions, and they created calendars. The Nelson family loved art. When George Nelson was 10 years old, he started writing and illustrating his own magazine. In 1904, George was excited to use a new drawing tool, crayons. Crayola crayons were a brand new invention. The company held a drawing contest, and George won first prize for his drawing of a cow. His prize was a pair of skates. George studied art and became an art teacher. He also had a wonderful voice and learned to play 5 instruments. After his mother died, he and his father moved together to Kent, Connecticut. That's a green word, on the Housatonic River. They organized a summer art school, the Nelson Outdoor Painting Class. And there's the Housatonic River. And here's a painting of Helen by George. And here's a self-portrait by George. And in 1915, Helen Redgrave came to interview George Nelson. Instead of interviewing him, she sat while Mr. Nelson painted her portrait. Oh, so sorry, that isn't his mother. That's Helen Redgrave. He thought that she was the most beautiful girl in the world, and they got married. George Nelson spent the rest of his life in Kent. A minister in Kent once described him as having a shy smile, a twinkling eye, and a warm handshake. Even though he was famous, he was gentle and humble. The minister said he was a good neighbor with many friends. He said that Mr. Nelson was always interested in the welfare of his house, his district, and his community. Like George Nelson, each of us has the opportunity to take an interest in the place where we live. We can be a good neighbor in our community, like it says in Romans 15:2. Each of us is to please his neighbor for his good, to his edification. Okay, so make sure you complete the map activities for Connecticut in the Atlas Workbook, page 15. So make sure you get that done. When you pause this, you can listen to chapter 12. And think about somebody you know who's interested in the welfare of their community, like George Nelson was. All right. Now, if you are using the lesson review, which we are, you are going to take the New England test on page 29. So I'm going to have a copy of that for you, and you guys can take that together and use your book. So go ahead and pause the video right now. Go listen to Rabbit Hill chapter 12. Make sure you have your map activities done. And then I want you to take the New England test together. And after you take the New England test, so pause it. I'm going to have you pause it because I'm going to give you the answers right now. Okay, so go ahead and take the New England test, and then I'm going to now say the answers to you so you know what they are. So once the test is done, open this back up and let us see if you got them right. So number 1 is B, paper. And if you can't find that, look on page 3. Number 2 is A, granite, and that would be on page 10. Number 3 is C, maple syrup, and that would be on page 20. Number 4 is B, Boston, and that would be on page 29. Number 5 is A, estuary, and that's on page 40. Number 6 is C, islands, and that's on page 47. Number 7 is B, Texas, and number 8 is Rhode Island. So see how you got on that test. And then, yep, I think that's it. And then they talked about a shape walk. And so we have left New England now. So we have done this entire section here, which is New England. Okay, that is it.